Welcome, welcome, welcome to Black Tea, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I'm your host, Michelle Lawrence. We are so pleased to bring you this interview series with Black women in advertising, presented by Muse by Clio. Today's episode, I'm so glad to be talking with Shari Mills. Shari, hi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Of course. So please tell the people what you do and where you're based.
Okay, so I'm Shari Mills. I am a Los Angeles-based associate media director.
Awesome. And so how did you find your way into the advertising business?
I'm actually a weird kid. I actually fell in love with advertising when I was around 8 years old, and I saw the movie Corrina Corrina. For most people, they don't know that movie with Ray Liotta and Whoopi Goldberg, but Ray Liotta was an ad exec, and throughout the movie, he was trying to figure out a jingle for Jell-O. And so it just sort of was, it had nothing to do with the actual premise of the movie, but it was just kind of like a side part of it. But for some reason, I fell in love with the thought of putting together commercials when I was about 8 years old. And that's kind of what got me in.
That's amazing. Wow, you don't hear about a lot of 8-year-old girls like, I'm going to be an ad exec. That's cool.
No, definitely not. I kind of ran with that when I was in middle school and high school. If everybody remembers those milk ads, I collected those. I had a subscription to People and Teen People magazines specifically so I could collect them and wallpapered my bedroom with them. So I've been an advertising nerd for as long as I can remember.
So amazing. All right. And so then how did the journey begin once you got into adulthood? Did you study it in college? Like, how did you get into it when you got it career age?
Yeah. So I actually went to Ohio State University, go Bucks, and I wanted to get into their communications program, which I did. However, at the time, they had an advertising major. They didn't have an advertising major, but they had communication classes and internships that could put you into the advertising field. So I kind of created and Frankensteined my own major, which was visual communication design and English. So it kind of touched on the fact that I'd be doing a lot of writing and creative work, and especially with the actual art direction piece of it. So that kind of is where I came to be. How I came into media was completely by accident. I had taken a job at my first media job, which was to do broadcast trafficking at a media company in New York, and sort of fell into it that way, and then kind of moved out of the trafficking department and moved over into media. And that's kind of where I've been ever since for the last 11 years. So.
Okay, amazing. Yeah. Wow, that's such a cool journey. And I just want to thank you for not doing that thing that Ohio people do when they say, I went to the Ohio
State University. I mean, I kind of wanted to. I kind of wanted to, but I didn't want to come across as like a total jerk. But
no, it's it's a thing. Everybody knows I'll do that. I'm sure it's an insider thing why. I'm not going to question it, but it's
just because we're better than all the other Ohio universities, if you know.
Okay, so I want to talk about like, what would you say to, you were this person at 8 years old and you knew you wanted to get into advertising. Did you ever struggle with any sort of imposter syndrome in terms of, ooh, I don't know if I'm good enough for this, or did you always kind of see yourself as belonging in the space?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I still struggle with that today. I don't know if there's ever a time when a woman like myself or anybody really doesn't go through at least a period of time where they feel like they don't belong, where they don't know how they actually got to where they are. Mm-hmm. There are days where I question, do I really know what I'm supposed to be an expert in? My focus is in digital media, but there are times where I question my own knowledge of certain things. I've been stumped before in meetings and I'm kind of like, and so you think, wow, should I have known that question? Or is that something that, am I at the level that I should be at? So I have that question. I self-doubt myself all the time. I think one thing that I probably tell 8-year-old me is it's okay to question yourself, but it's also okay to have confidence in yourself and know that you are where you're supposed to be. Um, you are at the position that you are because somebody saw that you are worth it, that your value is worth it, that you do know, for lack of a better expression, you know your shit well enough to be where you need to be. Um, and if there is a time where you feel like you haven't gotten to that position that you feel you're worth, it's okay to move on and fight for what you believe you're supposed to have. It's kind of a big deal where people in this industry tend to leave to get that promotion because the company that they're at doesn't provide that. And that's okay. That really is okay. If you believe that you are better than what you are being given, it's okay to stand up and fight for it. I know a lot of women like myself kind of are afraid of becoming that whole angry Black woman, where we are, we're afraid of stepping out of line. We're afraid of making too big of noise and having people look at us like, oh, well, she just stomped her foot and got her way because she's raising a big stink. Like, it's okay. You don't have to come across as being an angry Black woman to know your worth. And I think that's something that a lot of women have struggled with. I've struggled with it. But that's probably something that I would probably tell myself or somebody coming up in the industry, that it's okay to doubt, but stand firm in what you know.
Yeah. And I would just add to that, like, it's not always 100% up to you whether or not folks are going to see you as that angry Black woman. You know what I mean? Right. Just for asking for what you feel that you are worth. And, people, who don't fall into our category are still, stomping their feet and making the noise that they need to make to get what they need to get. And that's really what, what moves you forward is your ability and your willingness to do that for yourself. So I think that's a great piece of advice to 8-year-old you and to others that are, maybe there's some other 8-year-old ad nerds out there right now that are like, yes, thank you. So what do you think what do you have as a career dream, a career goal that you, an ambition that you haven't realized yet?
Career-wise, it's a good question. I think, I've been pushing and striving to get to the position that I'm at now for a really long time. I spent a pretty long time in my previous role. So to get to this associate media director position has been kind of a long time coming. I think next steps would be if maybe one day there is an opportunity for me to be a managing director. There aren't that many women or people who look like me in that position. And I think that's probably something, if I decide to stay in this role or in this industry, is where I could probably see myself ending up. That's what I would like to come to fruition. So I'm putting it out.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
Exactly.
So speaking on that same note, what is like your career FOMO in terms of a job outside of advertising? If there was a job that you could just magically be qualified to do and start tomorrow, that wasn't in advertising, what would it be?
I get laughed at a lot because I say this when people ask me this question. I'd probably either be a wedding planner or an event planner. I should just say events because I like to put together events as a whole, or probably open up my own bakery. I've been a huge, I cook all the time. People who follow my Instagram will see that. I cook all the time. I bake a lot. I do boozy cupcakes. I do little piñata cakes for parties and stuff like that. So I'd probably open up either a food truck or a bakery, or an event planner.
Piñata cakes? First of all, those two go hand in hand. You could totally do an event business where you also provide the desserts for said events.
That's true. That's true. I could do that. Yeah.
So how do you think that your unique POV as a Black woman kind of influences, impacts the way that you show up for work?
I think as a Black woman, I tend to have a different perspective on certain things. When it comes to, strategy and planning certain media buys that we've done, I work really closely with our strategy department and as a whole. And so when there's a question that comes up about how a product or a service might impact the Black community, or women in general, it kind of makes sense, and it a lot of people will turn to me to ask my opinion. But at the same time, when they don't ask my opinion, it helps for me to step up and kind of avoid certain situations. Not even at a place that I've worked recently, it's probably back in New York, where I was working for a brand, and there was a person who was higher up who questioned and said, well, do Black people even use this? And I kind of got offended because it was like, well, I've got a whole bunch of them in my bag and I have some at home. I use it as a body wash. I use it as a lotion. I don't know why you would say, do Black people even use this product? And so it definitely rubbed me the wrong way. But that was kind of the first instance where I realized if I wasn't in the room, somebody would get away with excluding
in a weird way.
me.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, okay, this makes sense. I need to speak up because it's going to end up either making the agency look bad, it's going to make the product look bad if you're leaving people out. And so it's very, very important to have that point of view, because you have to understand, while it might not be ideal for what you're marketing towards, you're leaving out an entire demographic of people who look like me. And you might forget that if they're not sitting in the boardroom with you. It's important to give us a space. It's important to give us a seat at the table.
It's unfortunate sometimes that we have to educate, and, kind of take that on in addition to, the regular workload that we're doing, to teach folks, what's okay and what's not. But
it's true.
Feel worse.
And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate because that story and that scenario should be an outlier. It should be something that you are surprised at. But the sad fact of the matter is, these things are happening and we're not surprised. And it's unfortunate because no matter how many times we will stand up and we'll speak out, and there'll be other companies and brands that will get bad press about doing these things, but yet subconsciously a lot of these heads of departments and departments as a whole are doing things and forgetting who they need to be reaching, who they need to be including. And I think that's kind of where I would like to see the industry move more towards. I know after last summer, there was a big push for inclusivity and, hiring more people of color into different departments. And that was a great start. But a lot of it I felt like was performative. I think a lot of people felt that way too, where it was, a lot of people had their little Black squares on social media and, standing up to it. But a week later, they're not doing anything different. Or the people that they're hiring that look like us are all, and this is not a slam against anybody, but they're all in the diversity and inclusion department. Right. And so those are the heads up. Those are the ones who are the face of their company to say, hey, we just hired a Black person. And while that's great that they have those people in those positions, there's still a lot that I'm looking around in different departments and there's nobody who looks like me. I'm coming back into a place where I was growing up in high school and elementary school and dance classes and everything, where I'm the only Black person. And so, no, we don't want to be forced to speak on our entire race. I can't speak necessarily to the same experience of somebody who is an immigrant from Africa. I wasn't born in Africa. My family is Jamaican. And so I don't necessarily have the same experience, but, I want to have my voice heard. I want other people to speak up on their experiences also. It's not necessarily my job to be a teacher, and I don't have a problem educating, but at the same time, it shouldn't be forced on us either.
Yeah, that is, that's something that, I'm hoping that more and more Black women will feel comfortable taking up the space to do, is basically telling their companies, what they will and will not be burdened with, and I think that's something that, happens, even at, pretty diverse agencies. Like, there's a lot going down last summer, and I think that we often get thrown into like, hey, we look to you, tell us what to do.
Right.
How do we fix this? And, to be able to push back and say, step one is don't burden me with how to fix the problems of this world.
Exactly.
Especially I'm hurting. We're tired, and this is
Very
not
tired.
our problem. It affects us disproportionately, but we didn't create it, and so we should not be asked to solve it. And that is something that I feel hopeful about. It seems like a lot of allies are starting to pick up on that and to take up the mantle, and I hope that's something that continues. But that's also, part of the reason why I wanted to create, this show, to give people the opportunity to just meet us, to just hear us, to hear our experiences in a way where we're talking to each other and for each other, and not to on behalf of like, being forced
An
out
entire group.
like the face of, X, Y, and Z. It's like, no, this is just, I'm the face of my face, and that's it. You either want to hear what I have to say or you don't. But yeah, so I'm very pleased that that you're, having this conversation. And is there a goal that you've set for yourself and achieved, for yourself that you are really proud of, that you want to talk about?
That's a really great question. I don't love going back and looking and seeing like, okay, I did this, I did that. And I don't know if that's just me. I don't even know if that's me being humble or me kind of wanting to move forward.
Not here. Turn it off for one question and talk your shit.
I think I am most proud of the teams that I have built.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing different perspectives to the different agencies that I've worked at. I've worked at quite a few, both in New York and in LA. Working on some really awesome brands, everything from Johnson & Johnson and Chobani to Dubai Tourism, Toyota. I'm really, really proud of being able to say I have these names under my belt. I didn't settle to work for kind of no name or lesser companies or lesser brands. I'm really proud of my skills that I've been able to introduce to a lot of different teams. Several times I've been brought on board to departments that didn't have certain capabilities, hadn't worked with certain publishers. So really being able to take a lot of those relationships that I've built up across both coasts and bringing them back and forth, if you will, and sort of introducing new technologies to different companies. I think, when it comes to certain projects, I really love what I did working on Chobani for the Olympics. I think that was something that I was really, really proud of. It was the first time the brand had ever done something that big, and sponsoring some of the athletes and doing kind of a big 360 initiative across TV, print, radio, or not radio, but digital. So that was a huge, huge deal. That was the first time I'd ever done something on that scale. So that was something that I was really proud of being a part of. Now I work with a lot of government accounts, but still doing some bigger initiatives for them. So a lot of local, like Los Angeles County, state of California, things like that. Right now, one of the biggest things we're working on is just getting the word out there about the vaccine coming out for COVID, especially in the Hispanic community, and making sure that they are aware, because we all know that there's a lot of hesitation, and especially after the last couple of years, there's been a bit of a distrust of the government in terms of immigrants and those who don't speak English, and not trusting, them coming forward, and, are they going to be deported, or is that going to break up their family? And so, trying to rebuild a lot of that trust, I feel a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but I feel a lot of responsibility in making sure that the messaging is going out there and that we are getting the vaccines, and we are, getting back to a normal way of life again. I think that's something that everybody really wants, and everybody's trying to figure out the best way to do that. And so to be a part of that is pretty cool.
I just want to thank you so much, Shari, for talking with me, for being on this episode of Black Tea. It's been incredible getting to know you and talking to you about this amazing career that you've had. I can't wait to see what you do next. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Everybody, that's our episode of Black Tea. Thank you so much for watching. And for more episodes, please go to musebycleo.com/Black Tea. Bye.
Bye.